Hegemony, High Command. 300 years ago, the conference chamber floated in the void between stars, a crystalline sphere where the Hegemony High Council convened across impossible distances. 7 holographic figures materialized in seats grown from living bone, their forms translucent, but their authority absolute. Commander Vectaron stood at the chamber's center, his forearms clasped behind his carapace in the formal posture of respect. He had stood here many times before, always to receive commendations, never to answer questions. Today felt different. 300 years, the first counselor said, her voice like wind through hollow reeds. 300 years since humanity went silent. Your assessment, Commander. Vectaron's mandibles clicked once, a gesture of certainty. Extinction Counselor. No species survives 3 centuries of silence in contested space. The humans are gone. Their territories are unclaimed, free for expansion. The council members exchanged glances that spoke of calculations and territorial ambitions. The first counselor leaned forward, her bioluminescent eyes narrowing. Then you will confirm this. Take the 12th Fleet to Sector 77. Map the dead zone. If you find remnants, catalog them. If you find resistance. She didn't need to finish. Vectaron had been finishing such sentences for 40 years. It will be eliminated, Counselor. See that it is. The hegemony does not leave questions unanswered. The holograms dissolved like morning frost, leaving Vectaron alone in the chamber. Through the transparent walls, he could see his fleet assembling in the darkness. 12 biocruisers, each one a marvel of living technology that had taken decades to grow. Their hulls pulsed with internal light organic tissue that breathed cosmic radiation and converted it to thrust. 40 years, 73 worlds, never defeated. He allowed himself a moment of pride before returning to his flagship. 2 months earlier, the planet Korvax had been beautiful once. From orbit, Vectaron had seen the blue-green continuum of its oceans, the white spiral of its cities, the golden shimmer of its agricultural belts. The Korvax people had been reasonable in their way. They had refused to surrender peacefully. That had been their choice. Now from the command membrane of his biocruiser devouring light, Vectaron watched the planet die. The spore clouds had done their work with elegant brutality. Billions upon billions of microscopic organisms, each one designed to consume, reproduce, and consume again. They ate through metal, stone, organic matter. Everything became fuel for their endless hunger. The planet's crust was cracking. Molten orange wounds spread across continents. The oceans were boiling away into steam that would eventually dissipate into space. 6 hours. That's all it had taken. Beautiful, Sub-Commander Zrel whispered from his position at the nerve cluster. His 6 eyes reflected the orange glow of the dying world. The old ways were too slow. Bombardment, siege, negotiation. This is efficiency. Vectaron said nothing. He had ordered the deployment. He had watched the results. But something in Zrael's tone unsettled him. A hunger that went beyond military necessity. Log the victory, Vectaron ordered. Then we move to the next assignment. Already, Commander, shouldn't we? We are not conquerors who gloat over corpses, Sub-Commander. We are warriors who complete our missions and move forward. Prepare for transit to Sector 77. Zrael's mandibles clicked in what might have been disappointment, but he complied. As the devouring light turned away from Korvax's funeral pyre, Vectaron found himself thinking about efficiency, about necessity, about the difference between victory and annihilation. He was 60 years old by hegemony reckoning. He had served longer than most commanders lived, and somewhere in those decades, he had stopped questioning orders and started executing them with the cold precision that the council rewarded. Maybe that was wisdom. Maybe that was just exhaustion. The jump to faster-than-light travel felt like falling into cold water. Vectaron embraced the sensation and tried not to think about burning oceans. Sector 77, present day, empty. That was Vectron's first impression as the 12th Fleet emerged from FTL at the coordinates designated Sector 77. Space stretched in all directions, black and vast, and utterly devoid of activity. No ships, no stations, no comm traffic. Nothing. Sensor sweep, he ordered. Navigator Shez worked her position with the efficiency of youth. She was barely 25 cycles old, assigned to the fleet as part of her mandatory military service. Her genetic profile marked her as a scientist, not a warrior, but the hegemony demanded that all serve. Negative contacts within 1000 grid units, Commander. No power signatures. No artificial gravity wells. No. She paused, her primary eyes widening. Wait, something at grid 77 Alpha. Very faint, could be debris. Could be. The signature is unusual, Commander. Metal composition, high density, no biological components. Zrael clicked his mandibles in what Vectron had learned to recognize as barely contained aggression. Human debris, Zrael said. The last remnants of their failed civilization, drifting dead in space. Perfect. We can salvage what they built and prove they never deserved to hold this territory. Vectron studied the tactical display. Something about the signature bothered him, but he couldn't articulate why. Just a feeling. An old warrior's instinct that whispered warnings in a language predating speech. Approach vector, he ordered. Standard formation. All ships maintain separation. If it's debris, we catalog it. If it's a derelict, we claim salvage rights. The 12 biocruisers moved through space like a school of deep-sea predators, their hulls rippling with bioluminescent patterns that served as both communication and intimidation. They had performed this dance thousands of times, the graceful spiral approach, the synchronized movements, the display of overwhelming force. It usually made enemies surrender before the first shot was fired. Commander Sichez said, her voice carrying a note he hadn't heard before. Confusion. The object is not debris. It's active. Propulsion systems online. It's under intelligent control. Size. Approximately 900 meters, roughly 3 times the mass of devouring light. That got Vectron's attention. Anything that size should have appeared on long-range sensors much earlier. Either their equipment was failing unlikely, or this object had been deliberately hiding until they got close. Visual, he commanded. The viewing membrane focused, and for the first time in 40 years, Vectron felt genuine surprise. The ship was wrong. Everything about it violated the principles that the hegemony had built their dominance upon. Where biocruisers flowed with organic curves and pulsing tissue, this vessel was all angles and hard edges. Metal plates covered its hull like armor scales on a dead thing. Weapon ports studded its surface in clusters that suggested redundancy rather than elegance. It looked like someone had taken a mountain, carved it into a blade, and thrown it into space. By the ancestors, Zrael whispered. What is that thing? Analysis, Vectron ordered, keeping his voice steady despite the wrongness he felt looking at the human ship. Shez worked frantically at her nerve cluster, her 6 eyes blinking rapidly as she processed data. Hull composition is refined metallic alloys, synthetic polymers, carbon composite reinforcement. Commander, the entire structure is dead. No biological components anywhere. No living tissue. No organic systems. It's all mechanical. Dead. The word hung in the air like a curse. The hegemony's philosophy was simple. Living technology was superior to mechanical. Organic systems could adapt, evolve, heal. Machines were rigid, fragile, limited. 3,000 years of conquest had proven this truth. And yet, this ship, this dead mountain of metal, moved through space with purpose and precision. Power readings, Vectron asked. Inconsistent with anything in our database, Commander. The energy signature suggests fusion reactions, controlled nuclear burning. I can't determine exact specifications without closer analysis. It's a corpse that thinks it's alive. Zrael said, his voice thick with disgust. Humans always were primitive. They never understood that technology must live to be truly powerful. Vectharon wasn't so sure. There was something about the ship's design that spoke of deliberate choices of engineering philosophy, refined over generations. The weapon placements, the armor configuration, the distribution of what he assumed were propulsion systems, nothing was accidental. This was not the ship of a dying civilization grasping at survival. This was the ship of a culture that had spent time thinking very carefully about how to kill. Open communication channels, Vectharon ordered. Standard first contact protocols. We established dominance of her terms of surrender and Commander Shays interrupted, her voice tight. The vessel is changing orientation. It's turning to face us. On the viewing membrane, the human ship rotated it on its axis with mechanical precision. Smooth, calculated, without hesitation. And as it turned, Vectharon got his first clear look at what humanity had built. The ship's profile was a fortress. Railgun turrets, the size of buildings, tracked smoothly across the sky. Missile tubes clustered in hexagonal patterns that suggested horrifying launch capacity. Point defense arrays bristled from every surface, like the spines of some metallic predator. Count the weapon systems, Vectharon heard himself say. Shares worked in silence for 10 seconds. 20, 30. Commander, I count over 400 distinct weapon ports. That's more firepower than our entire fleet combined. And that's just what I can see from this angle. Zrel's confidence evaporated. Impossible. No species builds one ship with such. They did, Vectharon interrupted. The question is why? Why would humans build a single ship with the firepower of a battle fleet? No one had an answer. The human ship completed its rotation and stopped presenting its full broadside to the hegemony fleet. Every weapon system pointed outward, silent, ready, waiting. It was the most intimidating thing Vectharon had seen in 40 years of warfare. Battle stations, he ordered quietly. Charge all weapon organisms. Prepare spore clouds for deployment. And someone tell me what we're actually facing. 3,000 kilometers away, Commander Evelyn Blackwood stood on the bridge of the USS Sentinel and studied the tactical display with the focused intensity that had earned her a reputation for being able to outthink opponents twice her age. She was 28 years old, the youngest fleet commander in colonial navy history. And at this particular moment, she was regretting every decision that had led her to this point. 12 contacts. Lieutenant Commander James Sullivan reported from the engineering station. His Irish-American accent thickened when he was nervous, and right now it was thick enough to cut. Unknown configuration, bioorganic signatures across all hulls. Ma'am, they're alive. The ships themselves are alive. Evelyn nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving the display. The alien vessels moved in perfect formation, creating patterns of light that were beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, like watching a school of anglerfish hunting in the deep ocean. Distance, 4,000 clicks and closing. They're not trying to hide their approach vector. That was interesting. Either extreme confidence or complete ignorance of Sentinel's capabilities. Maybe both. Communications, Evelyn called to the comm station. Rebecca Whitmore looked up, her southern accent, carrying a note of professional concern. Nothing yet, Commander. I am monitoring all standard frequencies. They're broadcasting on several channels. Might be internal communications, but I can't decrypt without authorization. Evelyn glanced at the chronometer. Admiral Drake's orders had been explicit: assess and report, do not engage without authorization. By the book, first contact procedures, diplomatic protocols, all the careful rules that humanity had developed for dealing with unknown civilizations. Her father would have laughed. Admiral Thomas Blackwood had been many things: a brilliant tactician, a decorated war hero, a loving father, but he had never been diplomatic. His philosophy had been simple: in space, hesitation kills. Strike first, establish dominance, apologize later if necessary. He had died when she was 16, killed by pirates who had exploited his one moment of mercy. Evelyn had learned two lessons that day. First, her father's aggression had gotten him killed. Second, mercy without strength was suicide. Admiral Drake had taught her the third lesson: strength without restraint was tyranny. Now she had to figure out which lesson applied to 12 alien warships approaching her position with what looked like practiced and intimidation tactics. "Kyle," she said to her tactical officer. Assessment. Kyle Brennan had been a Marine before transferring to the Navy, and he still had the Marine's directness when it came to analyzing threats. "Hostile posture, ma'am. Formation suggests pack hunting tactics. They're trying to surround us, create overlapping fields of fire. Classic predator behavior. If they wanted to talk, they'd approach on a single vector. This is a fighting formation. Weapons. Unknown types. Energy signatures suggest bioorganic systems, maybe plasma-based or particle projection. No kinetic weapons detected. No missile systems. They're relying entirely on directed energy." That was odd. In Evelyn's experience, any species that reached space-faring capability developed kinetic weapons. They were simple, reliable, effective. Energy weapons were flashier but had limitations that kinetics didn't. "Sullivan House Sentinel looking." The chief engineer's voice carried the satisfaction of a man in love with his machinery. "All systems green, Commander. Fusion reactors at nominal output, armor plating charged, point defense grid online, kinetic barriers at full strength, railgun capacitors at standby. Ma'am, the Sentinel is ready for whatever they want to throw at us." Evelyn allowed herself a small smile. The Sentinel was humanity's response to generations of paranoid speculation about what might be out there in the dark. Dominance-class patrol cruisers were designed to operate independently, to face unknown threats with overwhelming force, and if necessary, to hold the line until reinforcements arrived, or to make reinforcements unnecessary. "Ma'am," Becca called from communications. "I'm detecting energy buildup in their weapon systems. Can't identify the type, but it's definitely weapons grade." "Understood. Kyle, defensive posture only. Do not target lock. I repeat, do not acquire firing solutions. Let's see what they want before we start pointing guns." Kyle's hesitation lasted exactly 2 seconds. "Ma'am, with respect if they fire first. Then our shields will handle it and we'll have clear evidence of hostile intent. Until then, we're on a first contact mission and I'm following protocol." She paused. "My father never followed protocol. That's why he's dead. We're going to be smarter." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew the story of Admiral Thomas Blackwood. It was required reading at the academy, a cautionary tale about aggression without wisdom. Evelyn turned back to the tactical display and watched the alien ships complete their encirclement. Beautiful, precise, intimidating. She wondered if they had any idea what they were actually facing. Devouring light, hegemony, flagship. The positioning was perfect. Vectron felt a moment of professional satisfaction as his 12 biocruisers completed their traditional attack formation. The spiral pattern was both tactically sound and psychologically devastating. It had made entire star systems surrender without firing a shot. Weapon organisms charged and ready. Commander Zrel reported. His 6 eyes gleamed with anticipation. Acid pods prepared, plasma feeders active, viral spores loaded and awaiting deployment command. Each weapon system was a masterpiece of biological engineering. The acid pods could dissolve any known metal. The plasma feeders could burn through armor plating like tissue paper. The viral spores could infect and consume enemy systems from the inside. 3,000 years of warfare had refined these weapons to perfection. "Begin the approach pattern," Vectron ordered. Standard intimidation sequence. Show them what they face. The biocruisers shifted formation with fluid grace, their hulls rippling with bioluminescent patterns that told stories of conquest and death. Each ship pulsed a different color. Crimson violet, toxic green, creating a light show that had broken the will of countless civilizations. On the viewing membrane, the human ship waited motionless. No reaction, no counter maneuver, nothing. "They're not responding to our display," Shess observed quietly. Fierzurel said with satisfaction. "They know they're outmatched. 12 warships against one dead Hulk. They're frozen with terror." Vectron wasn't so sure. The human ship's silence felt less like fear and more like patience, like it was waiting for something. Open all communication channels, Vectron ordered. Broadcast on every frequency. Let them hear our terms. Shes worked her console and Vectron felt the tingle of translation systems, engaging ancient technology that could bridge even the gap between organic and mechanical civilizations. He drew himself to full height, forearms spread in the formal gesture of conquest. Unknown vessel, this is Commander Vectron of the Hegemony 12th Fleet. You are in territory claimed by the hegemony. You will surrender your ship and submit to our authority. Resistance is futile. You face the power of 3,000 years of conquest. Choose wisely. The words echoed through the void, carried on every frequency the hegemony could broadcast. In 40 years, Vectron had delivered that speech hundreds of times. It had always worked. Always. The human ship remained silent for 10 seconds. 20. 30. Then, a voice crackled through the communication system, mechanical, synthesized, but carrying an undertone of organic origin. A human voice translated and transmitted through technology Vectron didn't understand. This is Commander Evelyn Blackwood of the United Earth Colonial Navy vessel Sentinel. You are in human space. State your intentions. The simplicity of the response struck Vectron like a physical blow. No elaborate titles, no diplomatic protocols, no theatrical speeches about power and dominance. Just a direct question that assumed the human commander had the authority to demand answers. It was the response of someone who genuinely believed they held the superior position. Zrel's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter or disbelief. Commander, they think they can make demands of us. Shall I teach them their place? Vectron raised one hand for silence, his mind racing through possibilities. In his experience, enemies responded to threats in one of three ways: immediate surrender, desperate attacks, or attempts at negotiation. Never with calm questions that assumed authority. Human Commander Vectron transmitted, putting more force into his voice. You do not seem to understand your situation. You face the might of the hegemony. Surrender now and your death will be swift. The response came back, immediately delivered in that same unnervingly calm tone. I see. And if we decline your offer? The question froze Vectron mid-gesture. Decline who declined an ultimatum backed by 12 warships who responded to a death threat with what sounded like mild curiosity. Then you will be destroyed, Vectron replied, falling back on the standard formula. Understood, the human commander said as casually as if discussing weather patterns. Thank you for clarifying. Sentinel out. The communication channel closed. Vectron stared at the viewing membrane where the human ship continued to float motionless, apparently unconcerned by the threat of imminent destruction. Commander, Zrel prompted. Your orders. Before Vectron could respond, Shes spoke up, her voice carrying a note of concern. Commander, their power readings just changed. Significant energy redistribution throughout the ship. I can't determine what they're preparing, but it's substantial. Vectron made his decision. The human commander had been given a chance to surrender peacefully. That chance had been declined with a disturbing casualness. Now military necessity demanded action. All ships, he transmitted across the fleet network. Prepare for combat. Deploy spore clouds on my command. Show these dead ship builders what happens when you refuse the hegemony's mercy. The biocruisers rippled with readiness, their weapon organisms swelling with deadly purpose. Vectron took one last look at the human ship, massive, angular, utterly alien in its mechanical deadness, and wondered briefly what kind of species built ships like corpses. He was about to find out. USS Sentinel. Bridge. Ma'am, they're powering weapons. Kyle reported, his voice professionally calm despite the implications. Energy spikes across all 12 vessels. They're preparing to attack. Evelyn nodded slowly, her mind already running through tactical scenarios. She had hoped for peaceful first contact, hoped that humanity's long isolation would be enough to make aliens cautious. Apparently not. Sullivan redirect power to defensive systems, kinetic barriers to maximum, point defense grid to active standby. I Commander. Barriers at full strength. Point defense online and tracking. Becca record everything. Every communication, every sensor reading, every tactical decision. Admiral Drake is going to want detailed reports. Already recording, ma'am. Kyle weapons status. All systems armed and ready. Commander, railgun capacitors charged. Missile tubes loaded. Point defense tracking all 12 targets. Awaiting firing solutions. Evelyn stared at the tactical display at the 12 alien ships surrounding Sentinel in their elegant attack formation. She thought about her father, who would have opened fire already. She thought about Admiral Drake, who would counsel restraint and diplomacy. And she thought about the third option, the one that combined both lessons. Kyle acquired targeting data on all 12 ships, full firing solutions. But do not, I repeat, do not activate target lock. I want the calculations ready, but I want our weapons dark until I give explicit orders. Understood, ma'am. Calculating firing solutions now. Evelyn watched the tactical display update as Sentinel's quantum processors began analyzing the alien ships. Distance, velocity, mass, probable weak points, evasion patterns, optimal, intercept trajectories, all of it processed in fractions of a second. The alien ships were still closing, still maintaining their intimidation formation. They had no idea what was coming. Firing solutions computed, Kyle reported. All 12 targets acquired. Awaiting your orders, Commander. Evelyn took a deep breath. This was the moment, the decision that would define first contact between humanity and whatever these aliens were. Violence or restraint. Her father's way or Drake's way. Or maybe, just maybe, there was a third option she hadn't considered. Kyle transfer firing solution data to the targeting AI. Give it full tactical control. Authorization Blackwood 77 Charlie. Kyle's hands paused over his console. Ma'am, that authorization allows the AI to activate target lock automatically if it determines. I know what it does, Lieutenant. Transfer the data. I Commander, transferring now. Evelyn settled back in her command chair and watched the aliens continue their approach. Beautiful ships, elegant tactics, thousands of years of experience, and absolutely no idea what they were about to face. The tactical AI accepted the firing solution data with mechanical efficiency. Probability matrices calculated, threat assessments updated, parameters analyzed, and then without any human input, the AI made a decision. Target lock acquired. All systems, all targets, simultaneously. On the bridge of the USS Sentinel warning lights flashed red. Ma'am, Kyle's voice cracked with surprise. The AI just activated full target lock. All weapon systems just acquired all 12 alien ships simultaneously. I didn't authorize. I know, Evelyn said quietly, watching the tactical display light up with perfect firing solutions. I did. For 3.1 seconds, nothing happened. Then across 3,000 kilometers of void, 12 bioorganic cruisers realized they were being targeted by weapons they didn't understand. Guided by computers, thinking faster than organic minds could process with mathematical precision that bordered on precognitive. Every ship, every weak point, every evasion route, all calculated, all locked, all ready. The 12th fleet of the hegemony, 40 years undefeated, 73 worlds, conquered frozen space like prey animals that suddenly realized they're in a predator's jaws. Commander Evelyn Blackwood leaned forward in her chair and smiled. Now she said softly to her crew, "Let's see how they react when they realize they're not the hunters anymore." On the viewing screen, the alien ships hung motionless against the stars, the fleet that froze. First contact had just become very, very interesting. USS Sentinel. Bridge. The silence stretched for 5 seconds. 10. 15. On the tactical display, 12 alien biocruisers hung motionless in space, their elegant attack formation frozen mid-execution. Warning indicators pulsed across every screen on Sentinel's bridge, not warnings of danger, but confirmations of target lock. 12 ships, 47 individual weapon systems per ship, 564 separate firing solutions, all calculated, all locked, all waiting for authorization. Commander Evelyn Blackwood watched the alien fleet and felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and regret. Satisfaction because the tactical situation was now entirely under her control. Regret because she had just escalated first contact from cautious observation to implicit threat. Her father would have been proud of the aggression. Admiral Drake was going to be furious about the protocol violation. "Ma'am," Kyle Brennan said quietly, his marine training keeping his voice steady despite the historic nature of the moment. "Target lock is holding across all systems. The AI has designated optimal firing sequences for complete fleet neutralization. Estimated time to total destruction 4.7 minutes. 4.7 minutes to wipe out 12 ships carrying Evelyn. Did the math quickly. Probably 4 to 5,000 sentient beings. Kyle confirmed weapons are still in standby mode. I want firing solutions locked, but I want the actual weapons cold. No one fires unless I give explicit authorization." "Confirmed, Commander. Weapons are dark. Target lock is purely computational at this stage." "Good. Keep it that way." Lieutenant Commander Sullivan's voice crackled over the internal comm from the engineering deck. "Commander, I'm reading some unusual activity from the alien vessels. Their power signatures are fluctuating, not like they're charging weapons or like they're confused. If ships can be confused, their energy distribution patterns are all over the place." Evelyn leaned forward, studying the tactical readouts more carefully. Sullivan was right. The alien ship's power signatures were erratic, jumping between different systems without apparent purpose, like someone frantically flipping switches, trying to understand why nothing was working. "Becca," Evelyn called to her communications officer, "are you still intercepting their internal communications?" Rebecca Whitmore nodded her fingers, dancing across her console as she adjusted frequency filters. "Yes, ma'am. They're not using any encryption, at least not anything our quantum processors can break in real time." "Want me to put it on speaker?" Evelyn hesitated. Listening to enemy communications without permission was technically a violation of several diplomatic protocols. On the other hand, those same enemies had just threatened to destroy her ship. "Put it on speaker. Let's hear what they're saying." The bridge filled with translated voices, mechanical approximations of alien speech, but carrying emotional undertones that the translation AI preserved. Fear, confusion, disbelief. "Impossible. No organic mind can process that many targeting solutions simultaneously. Commander, they have firing solutions on all 12 ships. Perfect targeting center mass calculations on all vessels. How? How can one ship target our entire fleet at once? The precision it's mathematical. Absolutely mathematical. They've calculated our evasion routes before we've even chosen them." Evelyn listened to the panic in their voices and felt a coldness settle in her chest. This wasn't a military victory. This was technological shock. These aliens, whoever they were, had never encountered computational targeting before. They were used to organic minds, making targeting decisions, biological brains, processing threats one at a time. They had just met artificial intelligence for the first time and it had terrified them. "Ma'am," Kyle said quietly, "I don't think they understand what they're facing. Their weapons are still charged, but they're not maneuvering. They're just waiting." "Waiting for what?" "I think they're waiting for us to fire. They think they're already dead." Evelyn studied the frozen fleet and made a decision. Becca opened a channel to their flagship, direct communication commander to commander. "Channel open, ma'am." Evelyn stood straightening her uniform, a gesture that was entirely for her own benefit, since the alien commander wouldn't see her. But sometimes ritual helped clarify thinking. "Commander Vectron, this is Commander Blackwood. I imagine you've noticed that my ship has acquired targeting data on your entire fleet. I want you to understand something. Those target locks were not authorized by me. They were generated by my ship's tactical computer, which determined your attack formation, represented a threat, and automatically calculated optimal firing solutions." She paused, letting that sink in. "I'm telling you this because I want you to understand what you're actually facing. You're not facing a human crew making targeting decisions. You're facing computational systems that think faster than any biological brain. Systems that can target, track, and eliminate multiple threats simultaneously without human input. Systems that have already calculated exactly how to destroy your entire fleet in less than 5 minutes. Another pause, longer this time. But those systems only fire when I tell them to, and I'm not telling them to, not yet. So I'm going to ask you one more time, Commander. What are your intentions in human space? The response came back after 10 seconds, an eternity in combat situations, but probably lightning fast for someone whose entire worldview had just been shattered. Commander Blackwood, the alien voice was quieter now, stripped of its earlier authority. Your ship, it thinks independently. Yes, Commander, my ship thinks. It calculates, it analyzes, it makes tactical recommendations, but it doesn't make final decisions. I do, and right now I'm deciding not to fire. The question is whether you're going to make me regret that decision. Silence from the alien fleet. Evelyn waited, counting seconds in her head. In her peripheral vision, she could see her bridge crew watching her with expressions that ranged from respect to concern. She was 28 years old, commanding a first contact situation that would be studied for generations, and she had just threatened to destroy an entire alien fleet. If this went wrong, her name would be remembered alongside the worst diplomatic disasters in human history. If it went right, she might just prevent a war. Commander Blackwood, the alien voice finally responded, which required time to consider our position. Understood. You have 15 minutes. Sentinel will maintain defensive posture. If you power down your weapons, we'll interpret that as a de-escalation signal. If you maintain combat readiness, we'll prepare accordingly. Your choice, Commander. Evelyn closed the channel and sat back down, suddenly aware that her hands were shaking slightly. Well, Sullivan's voice came over the internal comm, carrying a note of dark humor. That's one way to introduce yourself to the neighbors. Devouring light, hegemony. Flagship, Commander Vectron stood in the command chamber of his biocruiser and tried to process what had just happened. In 40 years of military service, he had faced desperate enemies, cornered warriors, and suicidal defenders. He had never faced an enemy who could target his entire fleet simultaneously while calmly explaining why they weren't going to fire. The mathematical precision of it disturbed him on a level he couldn't articulate. The hegemony's philosophy was rooted in the supremacy of living systems, organic brains. Biological computation evolved intelligence. The idea that a machine could outthink an organic mind was heresy. And yet the human ship had just proven it possible. Commander Zrel said, his voice carrying a desperate edge. We still outnumber them. 4,800 warriors against what 200, maybe 300 crew on that mechanical monstrosity. We can overwhelm them with sheer force. Vectron turned to look at his sub-commander, seeing the fear beneath the bravado. Zrel was 40 cycles old, experienced but not wise, brave but not thoughtful. He was the kind of warrior who charged forward because stopping to think would reveal the depth of the danger. Sub-commander, they have targeting solutions that calculate our evasion routes before we choose them. How exactly do you propose we overwhelm something that knows where we're going before we do? We attack from all angles, simultaneously, saturate their defenses. Even their thinking machines can't track everything at once. Can't they? Vectron gestured to the tactical display where 12 target locks glowed with unwavering precision. They're tracking all 12 of our ships right now. What makes you think they can't track 12 dozen incoming attacks? Navigator Shez spoke up from her position, her young voice carrying a note of scientific fascination that seemed wildly inappropriate given the circumstances. Commander, I have been analyzing their targeting pattern. The precision is beyond anything I've ever seen. They're not just tracking us, they're predicting probable responses to hypothetical scenarios. Look at these firing solution updates. Every time one of our ships shifts position even slightly, their targeting adjusts instantly. It's not just computational, it's anticipatory. What does that mean? Vectharon demanded. It means their systems have built behavioral models of our ships. They're not just reacting to what we do. They're predicting what we'll do based on observed patterns. Commander, they've already fought this battle in simulation thousands of times. They know every move we might make. The command chamber fell silent. Vectharon could hear the organic hum of his ship's living systems, the pulse of bioprocessors, managing flight and combat systems. Systems that had served the hegemony for 3,000 years. Systems that were suddenly terrifyingly inadequate. Power down all weapons, Vectharon ordered quietly. Commander, Zrel's protest was immediate and sharp. That surrender we haven't even fought. You're going to condemn the 12th Fleet too. I'm going to save the 12th Fleet from annihilation. Vectharon's voice carried the weight of 4 decades of command. We are not equipped to fight this enemy. Our tactics assume organic response times. Our weapons assume vulnerable mechanical systems. Our entire philosophy of warfare is based on biological supremacy. And we just learned that all of those assumptions are wrong. He turned to face his sub-commander directly. Zrel, I've conquered 73 worlds. I know what victory looks like. And I know what suicide looks like. This is suicide. We power down, we learn what we can, and we report back to High Command. That's not surrender. That's intelligence gathering. And if they fire anyway, then at least some of our ships might survive long enough to transmit a warning. But I don't think they will fire. Did you hear the human commander's voice? She wasn't threatening us. She was explaining, like a teacher correcting a student's mistake. That's worse, Zrel hissed. She thinks we're children. Maybe to them we are. Vectharon returned his attention to the tactical display. All ships power down weapon systems. Maintain defensive shields only. And someone get me a direct line to their commander again. It's time to learn what we're actually dealing with. USS Sentinel, bridge, 12 minutes later. Mammalian power signatures are dropping across the fleet. Kyle's voice carried a note of surprise. They're powering down weapons. Looks like they're maintaining shields and propulsion only. Evelyn felt tension she hadn't realized she was holding drain out of her shoulders. The aliens had chosen de-escalation. That was good. That meant she wouldn't have to explain to Admiral Drake why first contact had turned into a massacre. Confirm weapons as standby on our end as well. Maintain target lock but drop power levels to minimum. Show them we're reciprocating the de-escalation. Aye, Commander. Becca, open a channel to their flagship. Let's talk like civilized beings instead of terrified animals. The communication link, established with a soft chime and the alien commander's voice, filled the bridge once more. He sounded tired now, stripped of the earlier bravado. Commander Blackwood, this is Commander Vectharon. My fleet has powered down weapons as a gesture of non-hostility. I believe we began this encounter with misunderstandings on both sides. Evelyn allowed herself a small smile. That was as close to an apology as she was likely to get from a military commander who had just been outmaneuvered. Agreed, Commander. Perhaps we should start over. What brought you to this sector? We were investigating. 300 years ago, humanity went silent. We assumed extinction. We came to confirm. 300 years. The same length of time humanity had spent in self-imposed isolation, building, preparing, watching. The galaxy had assumed human extinction. That explained a lot about the aliens' confidence. Well, Commander, as you can see, reports of our extinction were premature. Humanity has been silent because we chose to be, not because we were forced to be. A pause on the alien end. Then, may I ask, how many ships does humanity have? Evelyn glanced at Kyle, who gave a slight nod. The question was recorded along with everything else. How she answered would set the tone for all future relations with this hegemony. She could tell the truth that Sentinel was one of 47 patrol cruisers in this sector alone, with hundreds more across human space. Or she could let the aliens draw their own conclusions. Commander, how many ships does it take to defend human interests? That depends entirely on whether our neighbors are friendly or hostile. Right now, you're looking at one ship. Whether you need to see more ships depends on decisions your high command makes in the coming days. That's not an answer. No, Commander, it's not, but it's all the answer you're getting today. Now I have a question for you. What happens next? Do you return to your superiors and report first contact, or do we have more misunderstandings to work through? Another long pause. Evelyn could almost hear the alien commander weighing options, calculating risks, trying to salvage something from a situation that had gone catastrophically wrong for him. We will return to our space and report this encounter. But Commander Blackwood, what you did to my fleet, the targeting, the precision, the casual demonstration of overwhelming force. My superiors will want to know, was that standard capability for human vessels, or was your ship specially equipped? Evelyn smiled at the question, understanding exactly what he was really asking. Are all human ships this dangerous, or did we just get unlucky? Commander Vectron, the USS Sentinel, is a Dominance-class patrol cruiser. Patrol being the operative word. We're designed for long-range reconnaissance and border security. We operate independently, far from fleet support. We're built to handle threats alone until help arrives. She let that sink in before continuing. So to answer your question, yes, this is a standard capability for our patrol vessels. Our actual combat ships are differently equipped. The silence from the alien fleet lasted 15 seconds this time. I see, Vectron finally said, his voice carefully neutral. Then I believe we have learned what we came to learn. With your permission, Commander, we will withdraw from this sector. Permission granted, and Commander, no hard feelings. You didn't know what you were facing. Now you do. What you do with that knowledge is up to you and your superiors. Understood. Vectron out. The communication channel closed. On the tactical display, the 12 biocruisers began a slow rotation preparing for FTL transit. Kyle looked up from his console. Ma'am, they're leaving. Should we maintain target lock? Evelyn considered. Maintaining lock would send a message about human vigilance. Dropping lock would send a message about human trust. Which message did she want to send? Maintain lock until they jump to FTL. Then drop all targeting data and return to standard patrol configuration. Let them see we're careful, but not paranoid. Aye, Commander. Sullivan's voice crackled over internal comm. Ma'am, that was some mighty fine talking. For a minute there, I thought we were going to have to actually shoot them. For a minute there, Chief, so did I. Evelyn watched the alien ships continue their departure preparations and felt the adrenaline beginning to fade, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion that always followed high-stress command decisions. She had just conducted first contact with an alien civilization. She had threatened them with overwhelming force, and then she had let them leave with their lives and their ships intact. Her father would have been disappointed by the restraint. Admiral Drake would probably still be furious about the initial escalation, but Evelyn hoped that maybe she had found the balance between the two philosophies. Show strength, offer mercy, let the enemy choose their own fate. Becca sent a priority message to Admiral Drake. First contact successful. Alien fleet encountered, assessed as military threat neutralized through demonstration of technological superiority without loss of life on either side. Full report to follow. Recommend. Commander. Kyle's voice cut through her report composition, sharp with alarm. The alien fleet just changed course. They're not leaving. They're... Evelyn spun to face the tactical display, her hand already reaching for the weapons authorization panel. But what she saw wasn't an attack formation. It was something worse. The 12 alien ships had completed their FTL jump preparation, but instead of jumping away from Sentinel, they had rotated to face a different direction entirely, and their energy signatures were spiking again. Oh, weapons, but sensors operating at maximum intensity. What are they doing? Evelyn demanded. Unknown, ma'am. They're scanning something. Deep space bearing 27 Mark III. I'm trying to... Kyle paused, his face going pale. Oh no. Report. Ma'am, they're scanning 4 contacts. Unknown ships larger than the alien vessels approaching fast. And they're not broadcasting any IFF codes. Not ours, not theirs. Someone else just showed up to the party. Evelyn felt ice water pour down her spine. First contact with one alien species was challenging enough. First contact with two alien species simultaneously was a nightmare scenario that every academy instructor warned about. Becca hailed the alien commander, now. The channel opened immediately, and Vectron's voice carried a note of grim recognition. Commander Blackwood, I assume your sensors have detected the new arrivals. Confirmed. Are they yours? No, they are not. A pause. They are Ravager Collective, scavengers, pirates. They must have detected our battle preparations and assumed easy salvage. Commander, my fleet is in no condition to fight them. We expended significant energy in our demonstration. And if they realize that one of your patrol cruisers just dominated 12 of our warships, Vectron didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. If the new arrivals realized how weak the alien fleet was, they would attack. And if they saw that a single human ship had intimidated 12 alien warships, they would spread that information across the galaxy. Humanity's secret centuries of isolation, centuries of preparation would be exposed. Every hostile species in the region would learn that humans were back, and they would come looking for weakness to exploit. Evelyn made a decision that would haunt military historians for generations. Commander Vectron, are these Ravagers hostile to your people? Yes, they've raided our territory for centuries. Then I'm authorizing a temporary tactical alliance. Your fleet will remain in position. The Sentinel will handle the Ravagers, and when this is over you will continue your withdrawal as planned. Agreed. Commander, you're offering to defend my fleet. I'm offering to defend this sector, Commander. Your fleet just happens to be in it, and I really don't want to fill out the paperwork explaining how I let pirates attack on my watch. So yes, we'll handle this. You stay put and try not to look too damaged. I agree to your terms, and Commander, thank you. Don't thank me yet. Let's see if I can actually pull this off. Sentinel out. Evelyn closed the channel and turned to her bridge crew, seeing her own tension reflected in their faces. Alright people, we just signed up for round 2. Kyle, what do we know about these Ravagers? Scanning now, ma'am. 4 ships each about 600 meters. Configuration suggests heavy modification. Looks like they've bolted weapons onto cargo haulers. Energy signatures are crude but powerful, and they're accelerating toward our position. ETA 4 minutes. 4 minutes to prepare for a fight against an unknown enemy while protecting a fleet of aliens who had been her enemies 5 minutes ago. Evelyn settled into her command chair and felt something her father used to call combat calm settle over her. The strange peace that came from knowing the situation was completely out of control and the only option was to handle it anyway. Sullivan, redirect all power from non-essential systems to shields and weapons. I want the railgun at full charge in 3 minutes. Kyle, prepare firing solutions for all 4 incoming ships. Becca, broadcast a warning on all frequencies. Any ship approaching Sentinel without authorization will be treated as hostile. And someone get me a damage report on what we're actually facing. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency, each officer falling into their role like musicians in an orchestra. Evelyn watched the tactical display update as the Ravager ships grew closer, their crude weapons charging with visible energy spikes that suggested brute force over finesse. Ma'am, Kyle reported. Initial analysis suggests they're using plasma-based weapons. High output, low precision, designed for close-range bombardment. If they get within 2,000 kilometers, they won't. We'll engage at maximum railgun range, 10,000 kilometers. They never get close enough to use those plasma cannons. That's extreme long range for kinetic weapons, ma'am. Evelyn smiled grimly. Then they'll be very surprised when our rounds hit. Prepare to fire on my command. And Kyle, make the first shot count. I want them to understand what they're facing before they commit to an attack. Aye, Commander. On the tactical display, the 4 Ravager ships continued their approach, apparently unaware or unconcerned that they were flying toward a ship designed to kill at ranges their weapons couldn't match. Evelyn thought about her father, who had died because he hesitated, once showed mercy, once gave an enemy a chance to surrender. She thought about Admiral Drake, who believed in measured responses and proportional force. And then she thought about the lesson neither of them had quite understood. Sometimes the most merciful thing you could do was hit so hard, so fast, so overwhelmingly that the enemy never had a chance to make the mistake of fighting back. Kyle, target the lead ship, not center mass. I want the railgun round to pass within 50 meters of their bridge. Close enough to feel, close enough to terrify, close enough to send a message. Ma'am, if we miss by even a small margin, we won't miss. The computer won't miss. That's the whole point. Fire when ready. Kyle's hands moved across his console, finalizing the firing solution, checking variables, confirming power levels. Then, his finger hovered over the authorization key. Railgun charged and ready, Commander. Firing in 3, 2, 1. Firing. The USS Sentinel shuddered slightly as electromagnets powerful enough to generate their own gravity wells accelerated a tungsten rod to velocities that made orbital mechanics professors weep. The round left the railgun at a significant fraction of light speed, crossing 10,000 kilometers in less than a second. For the crew of the lead Ravager ship, there were no warning. One moment, they were approaching what they assumed was a derelict alien vessel. The next moment, something invisible traveling faster than their sensors could track past within 50 meters of their bridge, creating a sonic shockwave that rattled their hull and sent alarm systems into cascading failure. On Sentinel's bridge, Evelyn watched the tactical display update as the Ravager ship's formation broke apart their coordinated approach, dissolving into panicked evasion maneuvers. Becca hailed them. Standard diplomatic warning. Inform them they're in human space, they've been engaged with non-lethal warning fire, and the next shot will not miss. Broadcasting now, ma'am. The response came back in 15 seconds, a babble of multiple voices, speaking over each other in what the translation AI rendered as various dialects of some trade language. The general sentiment was clear enough. They were leaving. Fast. The 4 Ravager ships rotated on their axes and fired their engines at maximum burn, fleeing back into deep space like children who had just discovered the dark basement wasn't empty after all. Evelyn watched them go and allowed herself a deep breath. Stand down from combat alert. Maintain defensive posture. Kyle dropped target lock on the Ravagers, but maintained tracking. If they come back, I want to know immediately. Aye, Commander. And someone open a channel to Commander Vectharon. I believe he and I need to have a final conversation. The communication link established and the alien commander's voice carried a note that Evelyn couldn't quite identify. Respect, fear, maybe both. Commander Blackwood, that was impressive. You drove off 4 ships without destroying a single one. That was the goal, Commander. Destruction is easy. Control is hard. Now I believe we had an agreement. You withdraw from this sector report what you've seen and we all go home with interesting stories to tell. Agreed. My fleet is already preparing for FTL transit, but Commander, one final question. That weapon. The one that fired a projectile faster than our sensors could track. What was that? Evelyn smiled, though the alien couldn't see it. That, Commander, was a railgun. Kinetic energy applied with mathematical precision. Very reliable. Very predictable. And very, very fast. We find it useful for situations that require making a point without making a mess. I see. And is this railgun technology common among human vessels? Commander, the railgun is standard equipment on all human military vessels, from patrol cruisers to battleships. The only difference is the size of the projectile. Another long pause. Commander Blackwood, I want you to understand something. I'm 60 years old by my species reckoning. I have served in the hegemony military for 40 years. I have conquered 73 worlds. I have faced desperate enemies and superior odds. And in all that time, I've never felt what I felt today. And what was that, Commander? Obsolete. Your technology, your tactics, your entire approach to warfare. It's not just different from ours, it's evolved past ours. We're using organic systems that take seconds to process threats. You're using computational systems that process threats faster than we can think. We're fighting with biological weapons designed for close combat. You're fighting with kinetic projectiles that strike before we even see them coming. Commander, the hegemony has ruled this region for 3,000 years because we believed our philosophy of living technology was superior. Today you proved that philosophy wrong. Evelyn felt a strange sympathy for the alien commander. He sounded like a man whose entire worldview had just collapsed. Commander Vectharon, technology evolves. Philosophies adapt. Humanity went silent, not because we were defeated, but because we chose to focus on building rather than fighting. We watched, we learned, we prepared, and yes, we developed technologies that give us advantages. But that doesn't make your civilization obsolete. It just means you have new information to consider. You're being generous. I'm being practical. The galaxy is a big place, Commander. Big enough for multiple species with different philosophies. What matters is whether we can coexist peacefully or whether we waste resources fighting each other. Today, we both learned something. I learned that the hegemony has powerful weapons and disciplined fleets. You learned that humanity has technological advantages. Both pieces of information are valuable. What we do with that information determines whether we're neighbors or enemies. You sound like a diplomat, Commander. I sound like someone who really doesn't want to spend the next generation fighting wars that don't need to happen. So here's my final offer, Commander. You return to your space. You report what you saw here. And you tell your high command that Commander Evelyn Blackwood of the USS Sentinel says humanity is open to diplomatic contact. If your superiors want to discuss borders, trade routes, or mutual defense arrangements, we're willing to talk. But if they want to test our military capabilities again, you'll defend your territory. Aggressively, yes. Understood. And Commander, thank you for the restraint you showed today. A less disciplined commander might have destroyed my fleet when we first made threats. You chose to educate us instead. That choice saved thousands of lives on my ships. You're welcome, Commander. Now go home, tell your stories, and let's both hope our respective governments are smarter than we were today. Agreed. Safe travels, Commander Blackwood. Perhaps we'll meet again under better circumstances. Perhaps we will. Sentinel out. The communication channel closed for the final time. On the tactical display, the 12 hegemony biocruisers completed their FTL preparations and vanished in flashes of exotic light that bent the local space-time in ways that made Sentinel's sensors protest. Evelyn sat in her command chair and felt the adrenaline finally draining away, leaving behind exhaustion and a strange sense of anticlimax. In the span of 90 minutes, she had conducted first contact with an alien civilization, threatened them with annihilation, formed a temporary alliance, driven off a third party, and potentially laid the groundwork for future diplomatic relations. It was the kind of day that would be studied in academy classrooms for generations. It was also the kind of day that would give Admiral Drake a stress-induced heart condition. "Ma'am," Becca said quietly, "that priority message to Admiral Drake, should I send it now?" Evelyn closed her eyes and contemplated exactly how to phrase a report that would explain everything that had just happened without making her sound completely insane. "Yes, send it. Include all sensor logs, all communication records, and all tactical data. And Becca, add a personal note at the end." "What should it say, ma'am?" Evelyn thought about her father who had taught her to fight, about Admiral Drake who had taught her to think, about the balance she was still learning to find between aggression and restraint. "Tell Admiral Drake that Commander Blackwood respectfully reports first contact successfully completed without loss of life on any side. Then tell him I'm sorry for the unauthorized target lock, but I'm not sorry for the results. And tell him that humanity's long isolation just ended, and the galaxy is about to get very interesting." Becca smiled. "Aye, Commander. Message sent." Evelyn settled deeper into her chair and watched the stars drift past on the main viewing screen. Somewhere out there, 12 alien ships were carrying the story of what happened here today. The story of how humanity's silence
hadn't been weakness. How human ships thought faster than biological minds. How human weapons struck from ranges that made close combat irrelevant.
The story of the fleet that froze. And when that story spread and it would spread, the galaxy would learn that humanity was back. What happened next would depend on whether the galaxy's civilizations were wise enough to learn from the hegemony's mistake. Evelyn hoped they were, but just in case they weren't, the USS Sentinel would be ready. The patrol continued. Hegemony, High Command, 6 days later. The council chamber floated in the void as it always had, a crystalline sphere where 7 holographic figures deliberated on matters of conquest and empire. But today, the atmosphere carried a weight that 3,000 years of dominance had not prepared them for. Commander Vectaron stood at the chamber's center once more, 4 arms clasped in formal respect, and waited for judgment. The first counselor's voice cut through the silence like a blade through water. 12 ships, 4,800 warriors, 40 years of undefeated service. And you retreated from a single enemy vessel without firing a shot. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation wrapped in measured words. Yes, counselor. Explain. Vectaron had spent 6 days preparing for this moment. 6 days replaying every decision, every calculation, every moment of that encounter in Sector 77. 6 days trying to find words that would convey the fundamental shift in reality he had experienced. Counselor, the human vessel was not simply superior in firepower. It operated on principles that invalidate our entire tactical doctrine. Their targeting systems achieved simultaneous lock on all 12 ships in 2.1 seconds. Our best biocomputers required 3 minutes to achieve similar precision against 3 targets. The second counselor, an ancient warrior whose carapace bore scars from 100 battles, leaned forward. You're telling us their machines think faster than our organic systems. And I'm telling you, their machines think faster than thought itself, counselor. They don't process threats sequentially. They process everything simultaneously, and they do it with mathematical perfection that biological minds cannot match. Then we adapt, the third counselor said, her voice sharp with impatience. We faced technological challenges before. We evolve. We overcome. Evolution takes generations, counselor. We have days, maybe weeks before every hostile species in the region learns what I learned. The humans have been silent for generations. The galaxy assumed extinction. We were wrong. They weren't dying. They were building. Vectaron activated the holographic display, projecting the tactical data from his encounter. 12 biocruisers frozen in space. 564 targeting solutions displayed in geometric precision. A railgun demonstration that had vaporized an asteroid with casual ease. This is what focused preparation produces, counselors. Not an empire spread thin across conquered worlds. Not a military divided among occupation duties. A unified civilization that spent centuries building a war machine so powerful they only need to deploy one ship at a time. The first counselor's eyes narrowed. One ship. Yes, counselor. The human commander was very specific about terminology. The vessel we encountered was a patrol cruiser, designed for reconnaissance and border security. She implied their actual combat vessels are significantly more capable. Silence filled the chamber. Even through holographic projection, Vectaron could feel the weight of that implication settling on the council. How many ships do they have? The fourth counselor asked. Unknown. The human commander declined to answer directly. But counselors, in the 6 days since our encounter, we've received reports from 11 other fleets. All encountered human patrol vessels. All reported identical experiences, technological superiority, overwhelming tactical advantage. And in every case, the humans offered the same choice: withdraw peacefully or face annihilation. The second counselor's mandibles clicked in what might have been grudging respect, and all 11 fleets withdrew. Yes, counselor, every commander who faced human vessels made the same calculation I did. Victory was impossible. Survival required retreat. The first counselor rose from her seat in a gesture that commanded absolute attention. Then the hegemony faces a crisis. For 3,000 years, our supremacy has been unchallenged. Now we learn that a species we believed extinct has returned with technology that makes our finest warships obsolete. The question before this council is simple. Do we negotiate or do we mobilize for war? Vectharon had known this question was coming. He had prepared an answer that would likely end his military career. Counselor, I recommend a negotiation, and I volunteer to serve as primary diplomatic contact with the humans. The council members exchanged glances that spoke of calculations and political considerations. Why you, Commander? You're a warrior, not a diplomat. Because I understand what we're facing, Counselor. I have seen their capabilities firsthand. And more importantly, I've spoken with their commander. She offered diplomatic contact. Specifically, she said, humanity is open to discussing borders, trade routes, and mutual defense arrangements. That's not the language of conquerors. That's the language of a civilization that wants coexistence, not empire. Or it's the language of predators establishing territory before the hunt. Perhaps. But counselors consider this: the human commander had perfect fighting solutions on my entire fleet. She could have destroyed us in minutes. Instead, she explained what we were facing, gave us time to reconsider, and allowed us to withdraw with honor intact. That suggests a philosophy very different from our own. The first counselor studied him with ancient eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. You admire them. It wasn't a question, but Vectharon answered anyway. I respect them, counselor. There's a difference. Admiration is emotional. Respect is tactical. And tactically, the humans have demonstrated capabilities that demand our respect. Very well. This council will consider your recommendations. You are dismissed, Commander. We will summon you when a decision has been reached. Vectharon offered the formal gesture of respect and felt his hologram dissolve. Back aboard the devouring light, he stood alone in his command chamber and wondered if he had just saved the hegemony from a catastrophic war or condemned himself to a court-martial for cowardice. Either way, the galaxy had changed, and there was no going back. USS Sentinel, same day. Commander Evelyn Blackwood sat in her quarters and stared at the official communication from Colonial Navy Command with something approaching disbelief. From Admiral Harrison Drake, Colonial Fleet Command, to Commander Evelyn Blackwood, USS Sentinel, Pre-Incident Report, Sector 77, First Contact, Commander Blackwood. I have reviewed your report regarding the encounter with hegemony forces in Sector 77. I have also reviewed the sensor logs, communication records, and tactical data. Additionally, I have received reports from 46 other patrol vessels in adjacent sectors, all describing similar encounters with alien vessels identifying themselves as hegemony fleet units. Your decision to authorize AI-controlled target lock without explicit command authorization violated Protocol 7 Section 4, Paragraph 12 of the First Contact Directive. Under normal circumstances, this would result in formal reprimand and possible removal from command. However, your tactical judgment prevented what could have become a shooting war with a militarily sophisticated alien civilization. Your restraint in not firing despite having overwhelming tactical advantage demonstrated precisely the kind of wisdom we need in first contact situations. And your offer of diplomatic engagement has opened channels for peaceful relations with what appears to be a significant regional power. Therefore, I am officially commending you for exceptional judgment under unprecedented circumstances. I am also promoting you to Captain Effective immediately and assigning you as primary liaison for all diplomatic contact with hegemony representatives. Additionally, I am requesting your presence at Colonial Fleet Headquarters for strategic briefing. We need to discuss what our long isolation has revealed to the galaxy and what our next steps should be. Report to HQ within 72 hours. Congratulations, Captain Blackwood. Your father would be proud. Admiral Harrison Drake. Evelyn read the message 3 times, trying to reconcile the formal commendation with the subtle rebuke, the promotion, with the implicit warning that her career had just become exponentially more complicated. Captain, at 28. Her father had made captain at 35 and thought he was young for the rank. A soft chime indicated someone at her door. "Come in." Lieutenant Commander Sullivan entered, carrying 2 coffee containers and wearing an expression that suggested he'd already heard the news. "Congratulations, Captain. Though I have to say, ma'am, you've set a hell of a precedent for the rest of us. First contact, tactical dominance, diplomatic breakthrough, and a promotion all in one patrol mission. Makes the rest of us look lazy." Evelyn accepted the coffee gratefully. "Chief, I spent 90 minutes convinced I was either going to start a war or get court-martialed. Possibly both. This wasn't brilliant strategy. This was improvisation and luck." "With respect, Captain, that's horseshit." Sullivan settled into the chair across from her desk. "I've been in the Navy 23 years. I have served under 12 different commanding officers. And I can count on one hand the number who would have made the calls you made. Most would have either fired first and asked questions later, or hesitated too long and gotten us all killed. You threaded the needle perfectly. I violated first contact protocols. You adapted first contact protocols to unprecedented circumstances. There's a difference." Sullivan took a sip of his coffee. "Captain, permission to speak freely." "Always, Chief. Your father was a brilliant tactical commander. Admiral Drake is a brilliant strategic thinker." "You inherited traits from both of them, and you're figuring out how to combine them in ways neither of them managed. That's not luck, that's evolution." Evelyn felt something in her chest loosen slightly. Sullivan had served with her father on the old Excalibur before transferring to Sentinel. His opinion carried weight. "The Chief Admiral wants me at headquarters for strategic briefing." "Any idea what that means?" Sullivan's expression turned serious. "It means 47 patrol vessels just revealed humanity's return to the galaxy. It means every hostile species within 100 light years now knows we're here. We're advanced and we're not hiding anymore. And it means someone needs to figure out what the hell we do next." "No pressure then." "None at all, Captain." Sullivan stood offering a casual salute. "For what it's worth, ma'am, I'm glad you're the one making these decisions. The galaxy is about to get complicated. We need a complicated thinkers." After Sullivan left, Evelyn sat alone in her quarters and thought about her father, about his aggression and his death, about Admiral Drake's caution and his survival, about the balance she was trying to find between the two extremes. Humanity's long isolation had just ended, and she was about to help decide what humanity's next chapter would look like. Colonial Fleet Headquarters. 3 days later. The Strategic Command Center occupied the heart of Armstrong Station, humanity's largest military installation. Evelyn had been here once before as a newly graduated ensign, receiving her first assignment. Walking these corridors as a captain felt surreal. Admiral Drake met her outside the main briefing room, his weathered face creasing into something that might have been a smile. "Captain Blackwood, congratulations on your promotion and your survival." "Thank you, sir. Though I'm still not entirely sure which accomplishment was more unlikely." Drake's almost smile widened fractionally. "Come inside. There are some people you need to meet." The briefing room was larger than Evelyn expected, with holographic displays covering 3 walls and a conference table that could seat 30 officers. Currently, it seated 12, a mix of admirals, diplomatic corps officials, and civilian scientists whose presence suggested this meeting was about more than military strategy. Drake gestured to an empty seat near the head of the table. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Evelyn Blackwood, commanding officer of the USS Sentinel. She is the officer who conducted first contact with hegemony forces in Sector 77. Captain, you know most of the military brass. Let me introduce the others." He indicated a woman in civilian dress whose sharp eyes suggested intelligence analysis. "Dr. Sarah Westbrook, Xenosociology. She's been studying the communication records from all 47 first contact incidents." The next, a man whose diplomatic credentials marked him as someone used to negotiating with hostile parties. "Ambassador Richard Hayes, United Earth Diplomatic Corps. He'll be working with you on the hegemony negotiations." Hayes nodded professionally. "Captain Blackwood, I've reviewed your encounter transcripts. Impressive work. Not many officers could have threaded that needle." "Thank you, Ambassador. I had good teachers." Drake activated the holographic displays showing a tactical map of human space with red markers indicating the 47 first contact locations. Our long isolation is over, Drake said, his voice carrying the weight of historic moment. The galaxy assumed we were dead. We just proved otherwise. And now we need to decide what message do we send. Dr. Westbrook leaned forward, her analytical mind clearly engaged. Admiral, I've studied the communication patterns. There are three distinct narrative categories emerging. First species like the hegemony, who encountered our forces directly and recognized our technological superiority. Second species receiving second-hand reports and assuming exaggeration. Third, hostile species, viewing our return as an opportunity for conquest or resource extraction. Which category concerns you most? Drake asked. The third, obviously, but also the second. Species who don't believe the reports might test our boundaries thinking we're bluffing. That could turn messy quickly. Ambassador Hayes nodded agreement, which is why our diplomatic posture needs to be crystal clear. We're not conquerors returning to reclaim territory. We're not isolationists refusing all contact. We're a regional power establishing clear boundaries and offering peaceful coexistence within those boundaries. Evelyn had been listening quietly, processing the strategic implications. Now she spoke up. With respect, Ambassador, that assumes alien civilizations understand our diplomatic language. The hegemony commander I spoke with operated it from a framework where might equals right. They've spent 3,000 years conquering weaker species. The concept of voluntary restraint didn't compute for them. Then we teach them, Hayes replied, through consistent action and clear communication. Your encounter with Commander Vectaron was actually a perfect example. You demonstrated overwhelming force, then chose not to use it. That taught them more about human philosophy than any diplomatic communique code. Drake pulled up new data tactical analyses from all 47 encounters. Captain Blackwood, your report mentioned that the hegemony commander specifically asked about our ship capabilities. What did you tell him? I told him Sentinel was a patrol cruiser, sir, designed for reconnaissance and border security. I implied that our combat vessels were more capable, but I didn't provide specific numbers or capabilities. Good, because here's what you didn't know at the time. Drake activated another display showing ship production data. We currently have 112 Dominance-class patrol cruisers operational across human space. We have 47 Conquest-class destroyers, 23 Sovereign-class battleships, and we have 3 Colossus-class dreadnoughts that make your patrol cruiser look like a shuttle. The numbers hung in the air like a physical presence. Evelyn did the math quickly. Nearly 200 military vessels, all built to the same technological standards that had frozen a hegemony fleet in space. Sir, that's a fleet capable of dominating an entire sector. Why the long isolation if we were building this kind of capability? Drake's expression turned somber. Because building military capability was never the goal, Captain. Building a civilization that didn't need to use military capability was the goal. We've been conducting a social experiment. Can a species develop overwhelming martial power and then choose not to employ it for conquest? Can strength and restraint coexist? Dr. Westbrook interjected. And the answer, Admiral, the answer is what Captain Blackwood demonstrated in Sector 77. Yes, strength and restraint can coexist, but it requires discipline, wisdom, and the willingness to walk away from easy victories. A new voice spoke up, Admiral Catherine Morrison, head of strategic planning. Which brings us to the central question of this meeting. The galaxy now knows we're here. Every hostile species is assessing whether we're a threat or an opportunity. Every peaceful species is wondering if they can trust us. And we need to decide what message do we send. Drake turned to Evelyn directly. Captain Blackwood, you've had more direct contact with alien leadership than anyone else in this room. Based on your experience with Commander Vectaron, what do you recommend? Evelyn felt the weight of every set of eyes in the room settling on her. This was the moment that would define not just her career, but potentially humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations. She thought about her father who had believed in striking first and apologizing later, About Admiral Drake, who believed in measured responses and diplomatic solutions. About Commander Vectharon, a career warrior who had recognized when he was outmatched and chosen wisdom over ego. Sir, I recommend we establish what I'm calling defensive primacy. We claim no territory except our own. We seek no conquest, no expansion, no empire. But we make it absolutely clear that any species attempting to test our boundaries will face overwhelming force. We defend, we don't attack. But we defend so effectively that attack becomes unthinkable. That's a fine line to walk, Ambassador Hayes observed. Defense can easily be framed as aggression by hostile parties. Then we demonstrate through consistent action, Ambassador. Every encounter follows the same pattern: assess, communicate, offer withdrawal, and only use force if forced. The hegemony tested us and learned we could destroy them, but chose not to. The Ravager pirates tested us and learned we could eliminate them from extreme range. Each encounter reinforces the same lesson: humanity will defend, but not conquer. Admiral Morrison pulled up strategic projections. Captain, your defensive primacy doctrine would require significant changes to our current operational posture. We'd need to establish clear boundaries, patrol them consistently, and respond to every incursion with measured but unmistakable force. That's resource intensive. It's also cheaper than fighting 100 separate wars with species who think we're weak, ma'am. Drake nodded slowly, his expression suggesting he was already running scenarios in his strategic mind. There's precedent for this. Ancient Earth history provides examples. The key is consistency. Every encounter must reinforce the same message. Dr. Westbrook brought up communication intercepts. Admiral, there's something else you should see. We've been monitoring hegemony internal communications. They're not using quantum encryption, so it's relatively easy to intercept. And there's a debate happening within their high command. One faction wants to mobilize for total war against humanity. Another faction, led by Commander Vectharon apparently, is arguing for diplomatic engagement. Do we know which faction is winning? Evelyn asked. Not yet, but Captain, there's been a formal request for direct communication with you specifically. Commander Vectharon has asked to speak with you again, this time through official diplomatic channels. Drake looked at Evelyn with an expression that might have been pride or concern or both. Captain, if you're willing, I'd like you to take that call, with Ambassador Hayes present to provide diplomatic guidance. This could be our chance to turn first contact into lasting peace. Evelyn thought about the hegemony commander, a 60-year-old warrior who had spent 40 years conquering worlds, only to have his entire worldview shattered in 90 minutes. A man who had chosen to retreat when he could have fought, chosen wisdom when his ego demanded violence. I'll take the call, sir, when? Now if you're ready. We've kept Commander Vectharon waiting for 20 minutes already. Didn't want to start without you. Communication chamber. 10 minutes later. The secure communication room was smaller than Evelyn expected, designed for intimate conversations rather than formal presentations. The holographic projector at the room's center hummed with quantum coherence, ready to establish real-time communication across hundreds of light years. Ambassador Hayes sat to her right, his presence a reminder that she was representing not just the Navy, but humanity itself. Admiral Drake had positioned himself outside the camera frame, observing but not participating. Establishing link now, the technician announced. Connection in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The hologram materialized not just Commander Vectharon, but a full representation of his command chamber aboard the devouring light. The alien commander stood with his forearms clasped in what Evelyn now recognized as a gesture of formal respect. Captain Blackwood, Vectharon said, his translated voice carrying notes of careful formality. Thank you for agreeing to this communication. I understand you've been promoted since our last encounter. Congratulations. Thank you, Commander. And thank you for the diplomatic request rather than another armed encounter. I imagine your superiors weren't entirely pleased with how our first meeting concluded. A slight clicking of mandibles, that might have been laughter. That's an understatement, Captain. The Hegemony High Command is currently debating whether I should be executed for cowardice or promoted for strategic wisdom. The outcome remains uncertain. For what it's worth, Commander, I believe you made the right choice. Retreat in the face of overwhelming odds isn't cowardice. It's tactical intelligence. Your words echo my own argument to the Council, Captain, though I notice you've brought a diplomatic advisor to this conversation. Should I be concerned that our discussion has shifted from military to political? Ambassador Hayes leaned forward slightly. Commander Vectron, I'm Ambassador Richard Hayes, United Earth Diplomatic Corps. Captain Blackwood asked me to participate in this conversation to ensure that military considerations don't overshadow opportunities for peaceful relations. If I may ask, what is the purpose of this communication? Vectron's holographic form seemed to settle as if reaching a decision. Ambassador Captain, I'm here to deliver a message from the Hegemony High Command and to make a personal request. We're listening, Evelyn said. First, the official message, the Hegemony Council has reviewed reports from 12 separate encounters with human vessels. All reports confirm technological superiority, tactical precision, and most significantly, restraint in the use of force. Based on this analysis, the Council wishes to propose formal diplomatic relations between the hegemony and humanity. They're offering to send an embassy ship to discuss borders, trade agreements, and mutual non-aggression treaties. Ambassador Hayes' expression remained carefully neutral, but Evelyn caught the slight relaxation in his shoulders. This was the best possible outcome. First contact, turning into diplomatic engagement within weeks. That's encouraging news, Commander. Please inform your council that humanity accepts their proposal in principle. We'll need to work out logistics, but we're willing to host an embassy delegation. I will convey your response. Now my personal request. Vectron paused, his alien features difficult to read, but his tone carrying unmistakable earnestness. Captain Blackwood, I am 60 years old. I have served the hegemony military for 40 years. I have conquered 73 worlds. And in all that time, I never questioned whether what I was doing was right. I simply followed orders, executed missions, and believed that might made right. He gestured to something off camera, and new holograms appeared, images of worlds the hegemony had conquered. Burning cities, dissolved civilizations, the aftermath of 3,000 years of unchecked expansion. Then I met you, a human commander young enough to be my granddaughter commanding a ship that could have destroyed my entire fleet in minutes. And you chose not to. You explained what we were facing. You gave us time to understand. You offered us a choice. And in doing so, you taught me something the hegemony has forgotten. That true strength isn't the ability to destroy. It's the wisdom to know when not to destroy. Evelyn felt something tighten in her chest. This wasn't just a military report or diplomatic overture. This was a confession from a warrior who had spent decades following orders and was only now questioning what those orders had cost. Commander, please Captain, let me finish. My personal request is this: I would like to serve as the hegemony's primary liaison for diplomatic relations with humanity. Not because I'm qualified, I'm a warrior, not a diplomat, but because I understand what we're facing. I have seen what humanity has built, and I believe that if the hegemony is going to survive the next 1,000 years, we need to learn from you. We need to learn how to be strong without being cruel, how to defend without conquering, how to carry power without letting it corrupt us. The holographic chamber fell silent. Evelyn glanced at Ambassador Hayes, whose subtle nod indicated she should respond. Commander Vectron, my civilization spent generations learning those lessons. My father died because he couldn't balance strength and mercy. Admiral Drake taught me that wisdom matters as much as firepower. And you taught me that even lifetime warriors can choose growth over ego. I think you're exactly the right person to serve as liaison because you've already taken the hardest step, admitting that your previous path was wrong. Then you accept my request. I do. And Commander, I look forward to working with you. Not as enemies who became allies out of necessity, but as neighbors who chose cooperation over conflict.
Vectron's mandibles clicked in what Evelyn was learning to recognize as genuine pleasure. Captain Blackwood, there's one more thing you should know. In the 6 days since our encounter, 17 other species have contacted the hegemony asking about humanity. They've heard the stories about the frozen fleet, about the patrol ship that dominated 12 warships, about the railgun that destroyed an asteroid from impossible range. The story is spreading, Captain.
And with it a question, if humans are this powerful, why have they been silent so long? What do you tell them, Commander? I tell them the truth, that humanity wasn't silent because of weakness. They were silent because they were building a civilization so strong, they wouldn't need to use their strength. And that's the most terrifying thing any warrior can face: an enemy who could destroy you, but chooses not to because they don't need to prove anything. Ambassador Hayes spoke up again. Commander, you mentioned 17 species asking about humanity. Are any of them hostile? Most are cautious. A few are curious. 2 are openly hostile: the Ravager Collective and the Kresh Dominion. Both have built their power through conquest and resource extraction. Your return threatens their expansion plans. Will they test us? Vectron's expression, translated through holographic approximation, suggested grim certainty. Yes, Ambassador, they will. The Ravagers are pirates and scavengers. They'll probe your borders looking for weakness. The Kresh are more dangerous. They are a militarized empire with weapons comparable to ours. They'll send battle fleets to test whether the stories about human capabilities are true or exaggerated. Evelyn felt the weight of that information settle over the room. Humanity's long isolation was ending, not with peaceful recognition, but with inevitable conflict. When? She asked quietly. Unknown. But Captain, if I were planning an attack, I would strike within weeks. Before humanity has time to fully reveal your capabilities. Before other species form alliances with you. Before the psychological advantage of your reputation solidifies into permanent strategic superiority. Then we prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Commander, please tell your High Command we accept their diplomatic proposal. And please tell them we appreciate the intelligence warning about the Kresh. That information might save lives on both sides. I will. And Captain, one final question. When I return to hegemony space with this diplomatic agreement, will there be human ships patrolling our borders? Yes, Commander. But they'll be patrolling to enforce our boundaries, not to threaten yours. As long as hegemony vessels respect human space, human vessels will respect hegemony space. We're not interested in conquest. We're interested in stability. Stability. A luxury we've denied the galaxy for 3,000 years. Vectron's mandibles click softly. Perhaps it's time we learned that luxury ourselves. The hologram flickered and Evelyn sensed the communication was ending. Commander, safe travels, and thank you for choosing wisdom over pride. That choice might have saved billions of lives. No, Captain, thank you for teaching an old warrior that there are better ways to be strong. I hope our next meeting is under more pleasant circumstances. Boy, so do I, Commander. So do I. The hologram dissolved, leaving Evelyn and Ambassador Hayes alone in the communication chamber. Drake entered from his observation position, his expression unreadable. Well, the Admiral said quietly, that went better than expected, and worse in some ways. We've established diplomatic relations with the hegemony, but we've also confirmed that hostile species are planning to test us. Sir, Evelyn said carefully, Commander Vectron mentioned the Kresh Dominion. Do we have intelligence on them? Drake pulled up a holographic display. Fragmentary. They're a militarized empire controlling approximately 40 systems. Technologically sophisticated, not as advanced as we are, but significantly more capable than the hegemony. They've been expanding aggressively for the past century. And according to intercepted communications, they're very interested in what happened in Sector 77. How soon before they test us? Days, maybe weeks. Which is why I'm reassigning you, Captain. Evelyn felt her stomach drop. Sir, the USS Sentinel is returning to patrol duties in Sector 77. But you won't be commanding her. I'm transferring you to the USS Prometheus, Sovereign-class battleship. 3 times the mass of Sentinel, 5 times the firepower. I want you commanding our most visible asset when the crash come calling. Admiral, I've been in command of Sentinel for 2 years. My crew will understand that you're being promoted to a position that matches your new rank and responsibilities. Captain, you demonstrated something remarkable with Commander Vectharon. You combined tactical excellence with diplomatic wisdom. That's exactly the skill set we need in the next phase of First Contact. And that phase is going to require more than patrol cruisers. Ambassador Hayes added his perspective. Captain Blackwood, Admiral Drake is right. Your encounter with the hegemony was successful because you understood when to show strength and when to show restraint. The crash won't be as reasonable as Commander Vectharon. They're going to come looking for a fight. And when they do, humanity needs to demonstrate that our restraint with the hegemony wasn't weakness, it was choice. Evelyn thought about the railgun demonstration, about the asteroid that had ceased to exist, about the message sent and the message received. The crash will be expecting patrol cruisers based on the reports they've heard. If we meet them with a battleship instead, we escalate the demonstration to match their aggression, Drake confirmed. The message changes from we can defend ourselves to we can dominate this entire region if we choose to. It's a harder message, a more aggressive posture, but it might be the message that prevents a war rather than starting one.
Evelyn stood straightening her uniform and feeling the weight of her new rank settle on her shoulders. When do I take command of the Prometheus, sir? Tomorrow. The crew is already being briefed. Your executive officer will be Lieutenant Commander Kyle Brennan. He is promoted from your tactical officer. He earned it during the Sector 77 encounter. Your mission parameters will be provided during transit, but the basic objective is simple patrol the border regions where crash incursions are most likely. And when they test us, not if but when you respond with overwhelming force tempered by wisdom. Overwhelming force tempered by wisdom. That's a hell of a balancing act, Admiral. Drake's expression softened slightly. Captain, your father taught you force. I have tried to teach you wisdom. The combination is what humanity needs right now. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and remember that the goal isn't victory. It's peace maintained through strength.
Oh yes, sir. As Evelyn left the communication chamber, she thought about the path that had led here. From lieutenant commander on a patrol cruiser to captain of a battleship in less than a week. From unknown junior officer to the face of humanity's return to the galaxy. Humanity's long isolation was ending, and she was going to help decide what came next. 6 weeks later, USS Prometheus, Border Patrol. The USS Prometheus was everything the Sentinel wasn't. Where Sentinel had been elegant and efficient, Prometheus was massive and overwhelming. A sovereign-class battleship designed not for patrol duties, but for fleet engagements that might never happen. Until now. Contactable Commander Kyle Brennan reported from the tactical station. His promotion to executive officer had come with the quiet pride of someone who had earned their position through competence rather than politics. 4 vessels bearing 270 Mark V. Configuration matches Crash Dominion warships. Range 20,000 kilometers. Captain Evelyn Blackwood studied the tactical display, seeing the approaching ships with the practiced eye of someone who had done this before. But not like this. These weren't biocruisers operating on organic assumptions. These were military vessels built for warfare, crewed by warriors who had been expanding aggressively for a century. Composition, she asked calmly. 2 cruisers, 2 destroyers, all heavily armed. Energy signatures suggest plasma weapons and what might be mass driver systems. They're charging weapons. Of course they are. Communications hail them. Standard diplomatic protocol. The communication went out on all frequencies. The response came back in 30 seconds. A harsh voice that the translation AI rendered as aggressive and dismissive. Human vessel, you are in territory claimed by the Crash Dominion. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Evelyn allowed herself a small smile. This was the test. The moment when humanity's reputation would either be confirmed or revealed as exaggeration. Communications open channel, fleet-wide broadcast. When the channel opened, Evelyn spoke with the calm authority of someone who had frozen an entire fleet once before and was prepared to do it again. Crash vessels, this is Captain Evelyn Blackwood of the United Earth Colonial Navy. You are in human space. You have 60 seconds to reverse course. This is your only warning. The response was immediate mocking laughter. One ship against 4. You humans are either insane or stupid. We've heard the stories about your patrol cruisers, exaggerations meant to scare primitive species like the hegemony. But the Crash do not scare easily. Stand down and prepare to be boarded. Evelyn looked at Kyle, whose expression carried a mix of anticipation and dark humor. Commander, acquire firing solutions on all 4 vessels, full broadside, and charge the main gun. All weapons, Kyle asked, making sure he understood correctly. All weapons. I want them to see exactly what they're facing before they make any more mistakes. What happened next would be studied in military academies for decades. The USS Prometheus, a Sovereign-class battleship carrying enough firepower to level a small planet, activated every weapon system simultaneously. But this time, Evelyn didn't wait for the freeze. Communications transmit firing solution data to their flagship. I want them to see exactly what we're calculating. Kyle looked up surprised. Ma'am, that's psychological warfare, Commander. They've heard about the frozen fleet. Let's show them it wasn't a legend. The data packet transmitted in microseconds. On the Crash flagship, their tactical officers watched in horror as human targeting solutions appeared on their screens. Not threats, but mathematical certainty displayed as irrefutable proof. Ship 117. Optimal kill points identified. Time to destruction 4.2 seconds. Ship 221. Critical vulnerabilities mapped. Time to destruction 3.8 seconds. Ship 315. Reactor breach trajectories calculated. Time to destruction 5.1 seconds. Ship 419. Hull compromise vectors plotted. Time to destruction 4.5 seconds. The Crash commander stared at his screen and understood with the clarity that only imminent death could bring why Commander Vectron had retreated. This wasn't a threat, this was a demonstration of inevitability. All ships, the Crash commander transmitted his voice stripped of its earlier arrogance. Emergency withdraw, maximum burn, do not engage. The 4 Crash vessels didn't just stop advancing, they fled. Not the controlled retreat of a tactical withdrawal, but the panicked flight of prey that had just recognized an apex predator. Evelyn opened the channel again, her voice carrying the weight of generations of preparation. Crash commanders, you were expecting a patrol cruiser. You found a battleship. You were expecting exaggeration. You found mathematical certainty. You have 30 seconds to withdraw, starting now. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then, without a word of response, the 4 Crash vessels rotated on their axes and retreated at maximum acceleration. The beverage of the Prometheus remained silent for a long moment. Then, Kyle spoke quietly. Ma'am, they're leaving. And based on their communication traffic, they're reporting back to their high command that the stories about human capabilities were understated, not exaggerated. Evelyn settled back in her command chair and thought about her father, about Admiral Drake, about Commander Vectron, and every warrior who had chosen wisdom over ego. Stand down from combat alert, maintain patrol configuration, and Kyle update the log. First contact with Crash Dominion, threat assessed, threat neutralized, no shots fired. Were no shots fired, Kyle repeated with something like wonder in his voice. The legend was spreading. The frozen fleet had become the frozen fleets, and across the galaxy, civilizations were learning a lesson that would echo for generations. 6 months later, Memorial Station. Captain Evelyn Blackwood stood before the wall of names, a monument to the 40,000 civilians killed by pirates 20 years ago. Her father's name was there, Admiral Thomas Blackwood, listed among the fallen. I used to think you died because you showed mercy once, she said quietly to the engraved letters. But I was wrong. You died because you showed mercy without establishing strength first. That's the lesson I finally learned. Talking to ghosts, Captain. She turned to find Admiral Drake, his hair grayer but his eyes sharp as ever. "Talking to teachers, sir, both the ones I had and the ones I never got enough time with." Drake stood beside her, studying the wall. "Your father would be proud of what you've accomplished. The frozen fleet, diplomatic relations with the hegemony, the Kresh withdrawal. You've changed how the galaxy sees humanity." "We changed it together, sir. You taught me wisdom. Dad taught me strength. Commander Vectron taught me that even old warriors can choose growth." "And what did you teach the galaxy?" Evelyn thought about frozen fleets, about asteroids, turned to plasma, about enemies, given choices instead of ultimatums. "That true power isn't the ability to destroy. It's the wisdom to know when not to." Drake smiled. "Your father always said you'd surpass him." He was right. A soft chime from her communicator. Evelyn checked the display, a message from Commander Vectron. The Hegemony Embassy ship had arrived. First formal diplomatic session would begin tomorrow. "Duty calls?" Drake asked. "Always does, sir." As they walked toward the docking bay, Evelyn glanced back at the memorial one last time. 40,000 names. A reminder of what happened when strength without wisdom met cruelty without restraint. "Sir, do you think it will last, this peace we're building?" "That depends on the choices we make, Captain. Every day, every encounter, every moment we choose wisdom over ego." Drake turned to face her fully. "Your father believed in strength. I believe in restraint. You've proven we can have both. That's not just a military victory. That's evolution." Evelyn straightened her uniform and felt the weight of her rank settle comfortably on her shoulders. "Captain, at 29, commander of humanity's most advanced battleship, face of first contact, bridge between the philosophy of violence and the wisdom of peace. Then let's make sure that evolution sticks, sir." As the hegemony ship docked and the first formal interspecies diplomatic session in generations began, Captain Evelyn Blackwood walked forward to meet former enemies as potential allies. The fleet that froze had become the foundation of something larger, not an empire, not a conquest, but a promise that humanity could be strong enough to defend itself and wise enough to know when not to. And in the vast darkness between stars, where civilizations rose and fell on the strength of such promises, that wisdom might be humanity's greatest weapon of all. But even as diplomatic channels opened and peace seemed possible deep in uncharted space, something ancient stirred. The progenitors had been watching, had been testing. For 40 years, they had given humanity a choice: prove you can master restraint or be contained forever. Every encounter, every decision to show strength but not use it, every frozen fleet and peaceful withdrawal, all of it had been observed, and now the progenitors had their answer. Whether that answer meant acceptance or elimination, that story was just beginning.